All right.
Were there any of those African American?
No, none of those were African American. But in the meantime, uh, when I first came to P&G and during that period of time, since I was the only black PhD at P&G, and there were some uh, chemists and chemical engineers. Calvin Hopper, for example, was
Oh,
a
yeah.
chemist, and he was
People know
working in the
Brother.
I
toilet
forgot about
distribution.
Calvin Harper.
People
He
know
was a
Brother
chemist.
Harper.
Yes,
Yeah, and
yes.
there was a couple of other guys who were there, but what we represented, we recruited at all of the black HBCUs for undergraduate chemical engineers and
Okay.
chemists to
Okay.
come to the company. And we were able to successfully bring a number of people into the company.
Did you recruit
And
Janet Reed? Dad, is she in that?
Yeah, Janet
yeah,
Reed's a chemist.
Janet
Yeah.
Reed is but Janet is a PhD.
Uh-huh.
Janet and I were at Howard together.
Oh, you were.
Hmm.
Okay.
And so I was able to assist, I would say I assist in getting Janet here because there was another guy, Schumann, Joe Schumann, and I together worked on getting Janet here. Uh, but they, but in terms of recruiting, I was always involved in recruiting other black PhDs
Uh-huh.
and other BS chemical engineers
Right.
to try to enhance the number and et cetera. And also, I developed a program which uh, which allowed seniors, BS students majoring in chemistry, um, who were seniors, to come to Procter and Gamble and have a summer experience so
Right.
that they could learn something about industry.
Okay.
Now, the key to that was to that program was to make sure that the managers whom these students worked for were not treating them as a pair of hands, that they
Right.
were, in fact, given a project, that they were to set a goal for, develop a strategy for how they were going to achieve that goal, do the experimental work, and at the end, pull together a presentation
Right.
which they would present to the department in which they worked in. All of that
Okay.
was important in preparing, because these kids who are college graduates, they are preparing to be managers,
Right,
not
right.
a pair of hands when they not technicians. So,
That's right.
so a key element to that was that, and there were a number of Procter and Gamble employees who stepped up to the plate to be a part of that program, to work in that program, to help youngsters and be responsible for them. Because when you're working with either, college seniors, it could be a big liability.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Et cetera.
Right, right. Oh, go ahead.
Dad, you started an African American organization. That's what I'm going to call it. It might not be that. While you were working at Procter and Gamble, and I believe from our discussions that first meeting took place in this house. Now that might not
Wow.
be right, but would you talk about that
Yeah.
meeting and what the name of this organization is that still is in existence at Procter and Gamble right now?
The at being a senior black PhD at Procter and Gamble, and as we continue to hire more black PhDs, more and more issues arose across the company.
Yeah.
And so people were coming to me asking questions, and so at some point I felt that it was necessary that we pull a group of people together so that we could share these issues simultaneously and come up with what we would call working solutions of how we would approach them as a group. And so I called a meeting at my house and invited all of the black PhDs to come.
Did they all come?
No, all of them didn't come, and we had a good discussion, and at the end of the meeting, we decided that we needed to write a letter to the vice president of research and development, and kind of outline what our concerns were while we were meeting, and try to get an audience with him, et cetera. So we drew up the letter, and everybody there had an opportunity to sign the letter. I think there were about 14 people who signed the letter. And some people
some
who were there
refused to sign it?
Some people didn't sign it. Some people didn't show up to the meeting, et cetera.
Wow. Sounds familiar, Brother Smitherman.
But at any rate, the letter went forward, and the Black Technical PhD organization was formed. Recently, December 4th, I was invited back to Procter & Gamble to speak to the group.
Oh.
And
This past December?
this past
Okay.
December, to speak to the group, and the 14 people who signed the letter were installed as founders
Wow.
of the
That's
organization.
beautiful. And how many years ago was that?
Oh, this was
You
like
said-
1982, something
Okay.
like that. It's
Okay.
long time.
Good, good. That's
And-
great.
And as a result of that meeting, they established an award in my name to be given every year.
Beautiful.
You know, from
What a legacy.
now, from now on.
Yeah.
As a part of that group, and I gave the keynote speak at that group.
That's beautiful.
Keynote speak at that.
What a legacy that is for Procter & Gamble. And that's, again, to the viewers, what I was talking about when I opened, that there's a lot of information within this man that people in Cincinnati need to know about. And since we hold Procter & Gamble in such high esteem in most circles, I think it's real important to hear from him, from Brother Smitherman, on the kinds of things that he's done and what he went through. You heard him say the first day he walked into the office what happened. So it's really important for us to get this full context of his life at Procter & Gamble as well. And I want you to talk about, this man is an inventor. I mean, he has invented, well, I'll read it to you. I don't know what they are, but I'll read it to you. And I want you to talk a little bit about your expertise in that as well, but go on.
Well, let me just tell you a little bit about my expertise in some of the things. First of all, I am a physical organic chemist. And what a physical organic chemist does is look at functionality, and at least I have an ability to see organic molecules in 3 dimensions, how they might fit on a surface, and what kinds of things what kind of functions they might perform. So one of the things, my expertise when I came to Procter & Gamble, I didn't have any, companies don't share that, but I was given the opportunity to become a surfactant. That's surfactant. That's a contraction of 3 words, surface active agent.
All right.
Okay, so when we say surfactant, that means surface active
Yeah.
agent, something that's is active on the surface.
Right.
So it could be active on the cloth, a cloth surface. It could be active on the wall. And if you note, most of Procter & Gamble products early on were based on 2 things. One, they were based on long chain fatty acid type materials, and they were based on surface activity.
Soaps, for
Soaps
instance.
and yeah. So in my role, my first project when I came to Procter & Gamble was to invent and synthesize new surface active materials. And that's what I did. I'll give you an example of one, which we call, I use a few chemical terms here, but
Yeah. Well, one course in high school chemistry is all I had, so don't worry about it.
Well, first of all, this was something that we call beta methoxysulfonates.
Well, all right.
And we started off and we made this material in the laboratory in very small quantities. And in early small-scale testing, it showed a lot of promise as being a good cold water surfactant. So I was transferred to Ivordale to scale this material up so that we could get more of it. And I went to Ivordale, and within 6 months, we were making this material at 40 pounds per hour. And that involved developing kind of a thin film reactor. It's like if you take one big pipe and then take a smaller pipe and put in the middle of it the two concentric pipes, and you keep those apart. And so the reaction takes place on the film of these. You create a film by having the material slide down the center pipe, while water between the pipes keeps the reaction
Wow.
controlled.
You
And-
figured all that out.
Yeah. and then at the end, well, recognizing that this was I'm gonna use some words here which I don't know how not to use right now, but when you react an alpha olefin with sulfur trioxide, you create a secondary carbonium ion, which was quenched with methanol. And that's how the beta methoxysulfonate got on the end.
And he's trying not to use the word.
Right. I'm sitting here. Okay.
Can't make it any more
That's
simple
right.
than that.
Hey, that's right.
But at any rate, we were making it and we were successful. We scaled it up, and the only reason that the company didn't use it is because of something that you and I were talking about earlier, Jim, and that is, in order to go out and purchase enough alpha olefin to make this product, you have to have a certain volume, and we needed to have several brands of P&G detergents to use that product, to use that material in order to make it economically feasible. So we couldn't get enough brands to use it to make it economically feasible. So we didn't go with it. The next example I'll give you is one that deals with pretty much consumer preference. I was section head for Bounce. And, you know, Bounce has a tremendous odor. And I thought of the idea that we could have introduced an unscented Bounce. Now, the relationship between the brand downtown, the marketing brand downtown, and the technical brand is, you know, the technical people come up with ideas, functional, practical ideas.
Right.
The brand come up with positioning
How to sell it
and
in the
consumer
marketplace.
needs, et cetera,
Right.
marketplace
Yeah.
thing. Well, the brand downtown told me that, Herb, any full-service fabric softener have to have an odor. And I said, I don't agree with that. I said, any full-service fabric softener that's used by people who don't like odors, who use unscented product, don't need an odor.
That's right.
And so we had this going. And so I had the product I had the idea on the table, and they said, well, why don't you put the lowest level of the current Bounce odor in the product and test it versus Bounce and kill it. I said, I'm not going to do that. And so I made a trip to Green Bay and found that the odor of Bounce, before putting the odor, any fragrance on it, was just beautiful. No problem. It just smelled great.
Right.
So I came back to Cincinnati and convinced my boss that we should at least run a large HPT, that's home performance test.
Home performance test.
A home performance test of unscented Bounce, no fragrance, versus scented Bounce. But it would be a single product test, and we would have a reportable base of unscented product users. This is because there was no unscented fabric softener.
Right.
But there were a number of people who used unscented deodorants, unscented, other kinds of unscented products.
Right. Yeah.
So we've got together an unscented base, a group of consumers, 100 or so, which was a reportable base of unscented product users. And so we tested unscented Bounce and Bounce among these groups of people. And it turned out that